Right. Shall we kick off then? We've got a lovely webinar here for you today. Technical SEO in the era of AI search, big topic on everybody's mind. Yes, it will be recorded to share later. So yeah, let's kick in. So presenters today, you've got myself. I'm the Director of Pro Services here at Lumar, and the wonderful Sophie Brannon, co-founder and director at StudioHawk. She'll be doing most of the she'll be doing all the presentation. I don't know why I'm trying to claim credit here. It's looking like an absolutely fantastic presentation as well. But here's the agenda. So we've got some introductions and housekeeping, just some general stuff about closed captions and things like that. What is the latest in AI search? Crawling, blocking AI bots, structured data, multimodal search, which is something that's pretty new to me, to be honest. And then we'll wrap up with a summary and some questions that you can ask. So please feel free to add in your questions into the Q&A part of Zoom. I forgot the name of it there. There's a little Q&A button at the bottom if you want to ask a question, and we'll try and get through them all at the end. So into the housekeeping. As I just mentioned, the questions, if you type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, we'll try and get to them at the end. If we see one that we can answer as we're going along, then I'll try and chip it in as well. But we'd also like it if you could provide some feedback on this. Let us know what you liked about the presentation, the webinar, and anything that you would like to see on future ones. And then it will be shared on demand in a few days by email, full recording of the webinar, including my slip-ups at the start. Preserved forever. If you want to activate the closed captions, what you need to do is click on the closed caption icon. You can find that either, if it's not visible straight away, you can find that by clicking on the little more icon, the three dots, and then click show subtitles. If you want to enable the live transcript, you've got to click on the captions icon first and then choose view live transcript. And of course, again, the webinar is recorded and it will be distributed in a few days and will have full subtitles included. So on to the meat of the presentation. Poll question 1, how worried are you about AI in search? I don't know about you, Sophie, but I find myself sort of pivoting from, oh, it's kind of a new thing to, and it's not really what I expected to. Oh, wow, it's changing a huge amount. And that makes me sort of sometimes a little bit concerned, sometimes kind of sitting back. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely been flip-flopping a little bit. I think the Google I/O announcement really showed a lot of what's kind of coming and all of these kind of things. And with the initial announcement, I was a bit like, okay, cool, this is crazy. Like there is a lot going on. Like we're going to have to change a lot and things like that. But then kind of reading into some of these things and really thinking about how search has evolved kind of over the last 7 to 10 years, it's not really that surprising the direction it's going. So yeah, definitely been flip-flopping with all the new announcements and things, but definitely think we've got a very good kind of, SEO is almost the same thing as AI SEO, I guess. So yeah, we'll see how
Yeah.
it goes.
Yeah, I sometimes find myself thinking that something new will come out and it'll be like, how do you optimize for this?
Yeah.
And what we'll have is actually we're really well positioned. And here's the results of the poll. Some concerns, but I'm waiting to see how things unfold. 65% of people. It's kind of echoing my thoughts and your thoughts on this. Some people have put it keeps me awake at night. That's concerning, but I understand. I fully understand it. The speed at which it develops, in particular, it does make me think, have I missed something sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely. There's always a new model or something else coming out, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And the one person AI, what's that? Well, you're in the right place.
Perfect. Cool. Should I
Cool.
yeah, kick off?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll hand over to you now.
Amazing. So yeah, hey everyone, thank you so much for joining. I'm Sophie. I'm the co-founder and director of StudioHawk US. We're based out in Atlanta, and we are an SEO specialist agency. All we do is SEO. So for us, all the new kind of everything AI's and what's coming into search now and how things are evolving so quickly is obviously having a really big impact on, what we're doing, how we're looking at things, and where we're going to be going in the future. So I wanted to do this webinar today, basically just talking through more of the technical SEO elements. So there's so much out there at the moment, loads of news. LinkedIn is all just about AI and things like that. So just wanted to kind of recap some of the fundamentals, basically just go through some of the main things that we're focusing on at StudioHawk and where SEO kind of feeds into a lot of this stuff too. So a real quick recap of the latest AI and things that have been happening in that realm. So as we just said, LLMs, they're getting better. There's new versions being deployed all the time. I'm sure every time I open my phone, there's a new version of Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, and there's just so many things kind of happening all at the same time. The next thing is AI mode. So AI mode officially launched in the US last month, and there was a big Google I/O conference in May, and there was a whole bunch of things that were announced, and AI mode was one of those things. It's something that's actually been in labs since around March of this year. So there's been loads of testing going on and things like that, but it's officially a little tab in the US, and I'm sure that will be rolled out kind of globally throughout the duration of the year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. And then AI overviews. So again, it's something we've been seeing in the US for quite a while. It's now rolled out to more than 200 countries around the globe in more than 40 languages. And we're seeing so much more of the AI overviews coming in and taking up quite a lot of SERP space. So it's definitely interesting to see what's kind of going on there and the impact that's having on things like traffic and other key metrics that we look at from an SEO perspective. There are a bunch of other AI search things happening. For example, one of the things that was announced in Google I/O was the introduction of agentic search, which, there's going to be opportunities to check out on the search result and loads of other different functionality. But for the purpose of this, I really just wanted to pinpoint more around the AI overviews, the AI mode, and the LLMs, because a lot of this is really intertwined with some of the technical SEO elements we'll be going through today. So here's just a couple of examples of what AI overviews look like, what AI mode looks like, and things like that. So this is a screenshot of a normal search result for the keyword burger spots. This was taken in Atlanta by one of the StudioHawk US team, Matthew, and you can see just as standard Google search result, we've got our map listings and we've got our blue links there that we would expect to see. But this is what AI mode looks like for that exact same query. So we've got loads and loads of content there. It's all just AI generated. There's some reference links for more kind of informational content there. There are some map listing links there, and also some, not always, but some links on the AI overview, on the AI mode snapshot here too. So Fred's Meat and Bread that's linked to, Holman and Finch Public House has been linked to. All of these different things are links. Interestingly enough, they were actually linking through to the Google Business profile listings as opposed to the websites itself. And that is basically what the whole of the page one search looks like. And here's another example of AI mode. So this is for the keyword, which is a bit more transactional as opposed to navigational. Who sells the cheapest white sneakers? And again, loads and loads of content here. Very few links coming through. So there's a couple further down under physical stores, again, pointing to map listings instead of pages. And then just a couple of reference links up the top, then some map listings further down on page one. So definitely really, really interesting to see, there's not really any links to websites on this kind of version and these snapshots of AI mode, which is super, super scary for a lot of SEOs out there. That being said, as I say, a lot of what's happening with the AI search at the moment is evolving very, very quickly. So even information that we're kind of going through today, this may also change in like a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever that kind of looks like. Because this is a snapshot of another AI mode page for Buy Marc Jacobs bags that Lily Ray posted out on her LinkedIn yesterday evening. And there are actually links to loads of websites. So Google's definitely changing things. This is evolving very, very quickly, but super interesting to see how things are being referenced here. And then a couple of snapshots of what AI overviews are. So this is more looking at, similar to a featured snippet, way back when featured snippets were kind of everywhere and they were introduced, but this is an AI generated, a generative AI search snapshot that's being pulled through and collating all of the different information that I believe it's run by Gemini, being pulled through there and just congregating into an answer to kind of drive 0 clicks as opposed to getting people to visit websites. So super interesting to see here with just a general query. Now, with AI overviews, most of the results that are showing up with AI overviews actually comes from informational search intent. There are examples of a few commercial and few transactional. It's rare, but they are there. But most of the time it is informational content. So blogs, articles, things like that, and queries that you would include within those kind of content pieces. That's what AI overviews seems to be capturing a lot more of at the moment. But there's also examples not just at the top of the page, but in people also ask as well. So Richard actually shared this with me. So I wanted to throw this into the presentation today, but we can really see that these AI overviews are kind of coming up everywhere in a bunch of different SERP features. So I wanted to kind of just give you a bit of a run through about how search is kind of changing and the comparison between traditional search and AI-driven search and what that kind of means. So what we're really moving towards is this thing called vector search. So the way traditional search typically works is, the search engine is trying to match content with an exact or similar keywords. It really relies heavily on things like page rank, backlinks, keyword relevance, good quality content, things like that. The way we're currently doing SEO and have been doing SEO for however long. With the new AI-driven search, the way that works is it uses embeddings or vectors to represent the meanings of words, sentences, or even entire documents. So what that actually means is that rather than trying to match a single keyword to the most relevant article, to the most relevant piece of content, to the most relevant kind of collection page, product page, whatever that looks like, it's collating more within the semantic realm. So it's understanding what you're asking overall, not just how you're phrasing it. So what that means is that relevance is now more multidimensional. So your content needs to be really comprehensive. It needs to be very thorough, and it needs to just be very contextually relevant and not just repeating keywords. And I really hope that the way SEO has been evolving over the last kind of 5 to 10 years anyway, that a lot of SEOs have been moving into this more natural content, natural language processing, not just keyword density. But there is still a lot of that content out there that is very keyword heavy. So it's really important that we're thinking about that. The other thing is that Google's models and a lot of other search engines and a lot of AI models now clarity, not just how the different keywords overlap. So we really, like I say, want to be making sure your content is as comprehensive as possible. And alongside that, we're looking at relevant passages, not just full pages. So the way AI models work and the way AI overviews are working and how AI mode is working, they're taking passages, they're taking snapshots, they're looking at different chunks of content and pulling those in and aggregating them together to produce the result. So you really do want to make sure that your content is very, very readable and things like that. But a lot of the information that's out there at the moment is very much around things like the content and how vector search works and all of those different kind of things. But I really wanted to pinpoint today about technical SEO. So John Mueller said back in March 2025 at Search Central Live in New York that a lot of the foundational elements of search, things like the crawling, the indexing, all of these different things are still going to be relevant for search and for AI mode. So everything to do with how we're currently structuring our technical SEO elements and making that accessible to Google is also going to align with how that pulls through into AI as well. So really just wanted to make that super clear, like the foundations are still going to play a really pivotal role in this. So let's get a little bit more technical and really break down some of the main elements that you should really be looking at from a technical SEO perspective when it comes to trying to get your content and trying to get your pages in LLMs like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, all of those things, as well as in AI overviews and then eventually AI mode as well. So let's talk crawling. So AI crawls slightly differently to how a Google bot will crawl. So AI crawlers are using a lot more, well, probably not more machine learning than what Google is because they're using loads anyway, but a lot of natural language processing. So again, going back to the semantics and the meaning and the context of content, rather than just simply trying to match keywords with content and with each other. The other thing is that there is a lot more, AI crawlers can be a lot more aggressive in how they're crawling websites. So they can actually cause quite a lot of strain on website resources if they're hitting a website very, very regularly. And the other thing as well is that AI crawlers could be a little bit more selective about what content they prioritize. Because in some cases, if they already have that knowledge, they may not then go out and seek more knowledge to kind of refresh on that until their content and their knowledge goes out of date. So if they're looking at training in a specific way or they have specific retrieval needs, then they may crawl in a different way to how Google bots would crawl. So that's something that's really important. Ultimately here, again, it's high quality, informative content, informative text. But what does that mean technically for us as well? So let's talk about LLMs. So ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, things like that. When an LLM is used to crawl a website for information, it generally will fetch the raw HTML content. It won't go through the full kind of browser rendering process like Googlebot does. So it won't always, it can't actually execute JavaScript to dynamically render any content. It can't apply CSS to see the styling. It can't render the DOM to produce a visual output. It is basically just crawling the raw HTML. That means if your site is really heavily built using JavaScript, it may and is most likely going to have a really hard time crawling the site anyway. So you're really going to want to make sure that your websites are really HTML based rather than fully JavaScript. So what this means from a technical SEO perspective, client-side rendering can be really problematic. And this is something that we're seeing with Google anyway and have been seeing with Google. So this isn't like a new thing, but AI-powered crawlers do struggle with this more than what Google does. So what I would say is always try and push for server-side rendering when it comes to all of the content on your site. I have a good example of this where I was working with a website where their main navigation was client-side rendered, which meant when we were checking things like Ahrefs, we couldn't see the navigation. Google couldn't see the navigation. None of us could see it. Visually, we could as users, but the bots were not able to crawl this nav bar. So basically, the bots weren't actually able to get through to all of the different main hierarchical pages that we wanted them to. And we actually saw a decline in keyword rankings because of this. So we really pushed the developers to switch it back over to server-side rendering and really fix this issue. And all of our keyword rankings actually started coming back pretty quickly as a result of that. There were other factors like improved user experience, but that was one of the main changes we made, and it had a seriously good impact. So again, it's something we should be doing from an SEO perspective anyway, but definitely thinking about server-side rendering or pre-rendering and making sure that if you are client-side rendering stuff, anything that you have that's loaded with JavaScript is also accessible within the HTML. AI bots will be able to crawl it. Another thing here is semantic HTML is now going to be crucial. There is a different type of, or a newer, I guess, version of HTML called HTML5, which has actually introduced a bunch of new semantic web elements, which basically means within your content, within your code and within your scripts, it's gonna be much more descriptive for the bots to see. So an article is literally an article. A side as a tag is a sidebar. An image, an IMG is an image. Like it is very, very clear. Your footer, your header, your main, your nav, your section. Like it's very easy for a bot to understand what that piece of content is. When it comes to non-semantic HTML, which is where a lot of websites are built, particularly if you're using things like page builders within like WordPress and things like that, there's loads of div class, there's loads of these like just messy kind of HTML structure. Because it's non-semantic, it's not descriptive. It works, it looks good, you can see it, you can crawl it, but it's not as good as what semantic HTML is going to be for these AI bots in terms of helping them to understand the structure of a page. So that being said, I don't see this being like a big, we have to all rewrite all of our scripts and all of our websites. But if you are in the process or going to be in the process of having a website rebuilt anyway, definitely speak to your developers about potentially using HTML5 and semantic HTML instead, because it will just help to future-proof things. So the next thing is blocking AI bots. So obviously, if we're blocking AI bots, it means that we're not actually able to show up in LLMs. It means we're not able to show up in AI overviews or an AI mode or anything like that. But there are going to be some circumstances where you may want to consider actually blocking AI bots. For example, if you have data that you actually don't want to be accessed, sensitive information in medical, in financial, or if there's too much pressure on your kind of page loading and your page speed, you need to upgrade servers. There's a few different reasons why you may want to think about this. Again, I had an example of this recently where I was running a ChatGPT audit on a bunch of LLM audits to see where a client was showing up. And one of the things that actually came out was almost like personal information, like it was an audit invoice that was being pushed through into LLMs for a general search query about this particular brand, which is obviously not something we want. We want to make sure that all of that stuff is protected and is not accessible at all. So it's really important you do think about this and how you can do this. So generally speaking, one of the ways you could potentially look at this is, blocking different bots via your robots.txt file in the same way that you would block Google from crawling different URLs on your website. Now, the issue here is that LLMs don't always respect robots.txt files. And that's because they don't always declare like who they are essentially. So you might want to think about more of a server level or reverse proxy. You might want to think about Cloudflare or another firewall type way to block this. There was another thing called Google Extended that was actually introduced, I think, in 2023, which was introduced to help websites block things like Bard and Vertex AI, which was Google's machine learning platform. So really looking at things like that and playing around and testing things if you do want things to be blocked. But again, if you are blocking AI bots across the whole website, you will not show up in LLMs and things like that. There was also a bit of a talk about there being a new meta tag that was going to be specifically for LLMs to be a directive and how they were going to be used and how they were able to crawl a site and things like that. So that hasn't been announced yet. It has not really, I think it was more of like just a bit of through the grapevine chatter. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out with that. Another thing that's obviously come through is LLMs.txt, which I imagine people here listening in may have heard of, and there's been loads of talk about this on LinkedIn. So one of my good friends, Chris Green, he'd done a big kind of survey, a big kind of data pool on the top, I think the Majestic Million he used to see out of the Majestic Million, so a million websites, was anyone using an LLMs.txt file. So an LLMs.txt file simplifies website content into a markdown file so AI can crawl it a lot easier. So it helps with things like if your site is heavily built on JavaScript, to kind of render content and things like that, and it's not in your HTML, the idea was your LLMs.txt would provide that information to AI bots. Now, a couple of things here. The adoption of an LLMs.txt is extremely low. It's gone up to 105 sites out of the million that Chris Green pulled through. So no one's really using it. And the reason for that is because no major AI company currently supports it and they can't use it anyway. So it is right now pretty pointless. There's no concrete evidence that this actually works. However, that doesn't mean that's not going to be a thing in the future. So it may be something to keep on your radar. But right now, the ROI on setting this up and getting this done and adding it to the website is pretty unclear. And honestly, like it could be quite a pain to maintain it, especially if you have a very dynamic website that changes really, really regularly. But keep it on your radar if you do have a very kind of heavy JavaScript website that you just don't have the resource or the time or the budget to kind of turn into a HTML-based site or server-side rendered. The other thing to think about when it comes to blocking AI bots is that you could actually potentially accidentally block AI bots. So the first thing is the pages that you want showing up have to actually be indexed in order to show up in AI mode. And that was confirmed again by John Mueller and Barry Schwartz, like literally the other day. So that's a new finding that's come out. So your page must be indexable and it must be indexed to show up in AI. And then Patrick Stocks also found that the no snippet tag is also potentially blocking content from being shown in AI mode. He ran a few tests on a couple of his sites and he saw that his content wasn't getting included in AI mode, but it had a lot of the relevant content that was actually being shown up in the AI mode sections. So he then removed the no snippet as a bit of a test and suddenly it started appearing. So definitely review your HTML and see if there's any no snippet tags that might actually be causing you issues. The next thing we've got here is structured data. So structured data or schema markup, schema data, it can be called a few different things. But this is one of the more, not necessarily controversial topics, but there's kind of a lot of chatter about this. So the way I typically describe structured data is an extra bit of code that you can use that provides additional context to Google, additional context to AI, things like this around, who you are, what you do, what products you're selling. If you've got any reviews on the website, you might want to mark that up to really showcase that you have, however many 5-star reviews. And it's extra information that can be pulled into Google as kind of rich results, and then also potentially providing information to AI more about your products, yourselves, your organization. There's loads and loads of different things for it. Now, the discussion point here is that there's very conflicting information out there. There's been tests run, and I know Richard, we were having a really good chat about this, where they are not all AI bots or not all AI models are actually able to even use structured data. They can't format it in a table properly. Things don't always work. But then there's other information out there that says definitely mark up your site with loads and loads of structured data because it provides more explicit clues about the meaning behind content. So when we're talking about semantics, the meaning behind things, it helps with that connection. It helps with that knowledge graph and, where all of the entities connect. So does it work? Does it not work? It's very conflicting. I would honestly say use structured data to the best way in the best way that you can, because regardless, Google can still use it. And we shouldn't always just be thinking about AI bots and all these things. The fundamentals here are still going to matter. You still are going to want to show up in Google. You're not going to want to give up on that completely. There's no need to. There's still a good portion of traffic there waiting to be had just on Google. So use structured data, look at your product schema if you've got e-commerce sites. If you have an informational site where you've got articles, use article schema, author schema, organization schema for every business type. There's loads and hundreds out there. Just go to schema.org and you'll see everything that's available. And why this works is because it helps to power what's known as a knowledge graph. So a knowledge graph is essentially a graph that helps to really represent how different entities or nodes connect with each other. So a great example of this is on the right-hand side here. So looking at Georgia Aquarium. So StudioHawk US based in Atlanta, it was a great example to show you guys. We have an awesome aquarium in Atlanta. It's great. There's whale sharks there. There's the Ocean Voyager exhibit, which is cool. It's a really big tourist attraction in the area. I think you could potentially snorkel in the aquarium stuff. There's all sorts of things you can do. But the idea behind using the structured data to really connect these points is to be able to tell Google, to tell AI bots if they can read it and if they can crawl it, how all of these things connect. So the Georgia Aquarium is based in Atlanta. Atlanta is based in the United States. Within the Georgia Aquarium, there's a whale shark. The whale shark's in the Ocean Voyager exhibit. The Ocean Voyager exhibit is in the Georgia Aquarium, which is in Atlanta, which is in the United States. And you'll see all of these different entities all starting to connect with each other. And that is what structured data can really help to convey outside of, having Google or having AI bots just crawling your content to try and figure that out. You're putting it there on a plate for them ready to crawl. And again, AI potentially uses structured data depending on what resources you're reading and how you're testing with this. I've seen it work in some cases, seen it not work in others, but ultimately the idea behind it is that AI-powered systems will use structured data to better understand the content, better display enhanced search results. LLMs can potentially more easily extract relevant information. It helps to improve the quality of their responses in that case. And then voice assistants like your Alexa or a Google Assistant, they can also use structured data, like if you've got an event going on or specific product, to really provide direct answers to voice queries as well. So it helps them to really just pull that information out, again, without having to crawl through the entire site or the entire page to find it. And then one of the things which we've been talking about for years now, but never in the same capacity as we are right now, is multimodal search. So multimodal search is all of the different ways someone could potentially search and how they could potentially consume your content. So it could be a text search in the same way that we're doing within Google and we're just typing queries, or in ChatGPT. We're doing lots more with voice search, which again has been a hype for I mean, I've been in SEO for 10 years. Probably before then, everyone was saying voice search was going to be the end of SEO and things like that. We're starting to see more use of voice search, image search as well. You can do loads of that now, more than you ever could before. Audio, video, location-based search. There's so many different variations now. Again, it's not just a specific keyword that people are putting in that then is being matched to a piece of content. There's all of these other ways that you can find information and how that can be displayed back to you. So what we really want to make sure we're doing is all of your different elements are being optimized. So it's not just your content, it's your images are being well optimized, your video being well optimized, making sure if you're based in a specific location and your customer base is in a location, you're really owning that location. It's about making sure that every asset you own, you are really making sure that it's doing its job. So then when it comes to summary, just wrapping this up before we go into questions, because I'm sure there's going to be loads. So technical SEO fundamentals here are still the key. So everything we've spoken about, making sure your site's crawlable, making sure your structured data is well structured essentially, and you're really providing those connections and providing those kind of elements. All of these things like responsiveness, user experience, AI focuses on accessibility. So even your images, your alt text, it's not always just about accessibility now. It's also about AI bots crawling it, but user experience across devices as well. One thing I mentioned it earlier about agentic search, they were talking about things like potentially bringing in forms into search results in the future, and same as checkout processes. So make your forms and make your checkout process as easy as possible to fill in for users and bots as well. Make everything accessible or as accessible as you can. The same thing with site architecture. So site architecture and internal linking, a really clear site architecture is going to help your users navigate your site. It's going to help Googlebot navigate your site, and it's going to help AI navigate your site. It's going to help them to understand your content's hierarchy and the relationships between pages. So making sure you've got well-optimized anchor text when it comes to your internal linking within pages, making sure that your users can navigate where they need to go. All of this stuff is tech SEO basics that we've been doing for years, but it's about now what we prioritize. And site architecture definitely needs to be up there, IA, things like that. Then the client versus server-side rendering. So server-side rendering is becoming even more important. AI really struggles with JavaScript, but Google also struggles with JavaScript at times. So making sure that you're kind of putting that time, putting that resource into having most of your main, at least your main elements being server-side rendered, and you haven't got content that's dynamically rendering via JavaScript that's not in your HTML, because then it's going to miss out on being shown in Google probably, but definitely in AI. And then optimize all of your site assets. So it's really important that all of your site assets, your videos, your content, your images, all of this is well optimized, and you're not just focusing on, okay, I know that my content needs to be comprehensive now, so I need to make sure I've got 100 different keywords within my piece of content that might be relevant for semantic search. Everything can be well optimized. Things do need to be comprehensive, but it needs to be natural. And we need to make sure that we've got the fundamentals still in place. Perfect.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sophie. That was amazing. Moving on to our second poll question here. What are you prioritizing with your technical SEO? Just to be clear there, you've just done about 30 minutes solidly speaking with no mistakes. I speak for 2 seconds and can't say the word prioritizing.
I just got very excited. This really nerdy stuff. It makes me very excited, but I have a very dry throat now. No, I'm super interested to see what the results come back on this poll. Because there's a few things I'm definitely prioritizing slightly differently to what I was before. So I'm very, very curious.
Yeah, I tend to take it depending on the individual website.
Mm,
So obviously people here are more likely to be working on individual websites, I think. So their priorities are going to be different to mine, and I'm quite interested to see what actually is the focus at the moment.
yeah, absolutely.
And here we go, drum roll.
Hey,
Wow, it's quite well split, to be
it's
honest.
very well split. Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, crawlability and structured data. Crawlability makes sense to me completely.
Mhm.
If it's not crawlable, can't be indexed, can't be found in AI, doesn't matter about that. Structured data being so high is quite interesting.
Yeah, that's great though. That's really good.
Yeah, yeah, and we can certainly see the benefits of it with Google. I know it's still up in the air about AI, but the benefits are still there. So
Yeah.
it's not like you're investing in nothing.
No, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. And like I said earlier, the semantic kind of references between things and like how the different entities connect with each other, I think is going to be so big. And even if AI bots struggle with it now, I can definitely see the newer models that eventually come out really being able to process that because it makes sense, right? It's giving them
Yeah,
information on like already. They don't need to do all the extra work.
exactly, exactly. It just supports what they already know. You would think they would love it and from the start, but I sometimes think because of the way it was originally made, they didn't have structured data. You know, they're ingesting books, they're ingesting things like this. So maybe they just didn't consider it at the time.
Mhm.
And then now that we're moving into this sort of web-led version of LLMs, maybe this is the way forward. But we won't know. It's up to the people who make the LLMs to make that decision.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think from my side, site architecture is huge.
Oh yeah,
Definitely working with quite a lot of websites right now where we're like trying to just build out more IA structure, trying to just build out more hierarchical like signals is probably the main thing to being like, hey, this is our main product, like or main section. This is where we want our filtering system to be on e-com sites. This is where we want things to be pointing to. So that's definitely been a big focus for me recently.
absolutely. Yeah, there's always value to be got from there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then again, even with the user experience, I mean, I know we're talking here about what we're prioritizing, but I feel like user experience is something that should have always been prioritized. But because there's
Mm,
always been a way to gamify Google, a lot of people haven't been prioritizing that. And it's always been about bots. And then we went through this stage of, no, it must be user first, must be user first. And it switched. And potentially now with all of the AI stuff, people might start going back the other way towards bots. But I feel like user experience is always going to be key, always.
absolutely, totally agree. Um, cool. So the next thing I wanted to just flag here was AI search, how Lumar helps. So we've got some existing reports in Lumar, crawlability, just pointing out that was a big one. We can identify if AI bots can access your page. We've already got a report on that. Renderability, we can tell you the differences between the raw and the rendered HTML, or if there are differences between your raw and rendered HTML. Index and visibility, revealing which pages are ignored by search engines or just completely missed from the SERPs. You can also invert that, tell you which pages are being shown in the SERPs and how much of your website as a percentage is appearing in the SERPs. Structured data, we can find your structured data, including highlighting some invalid markup or highlighting high value structured content. And finally, the big one, bot behavior and crawl budgets can show how often AI bots hit your pages and which are ignored. So we do that by ingesting that information into the other parts of your crawl and just overlaying it over the top. We do have some exciting ongoing R&D from our AI team. So what we're looking at there, well, there's a few things we're looking at, but one of the most exciting ones is summarizing things to allow you to quickly identify which ones are the most important. And it's going to take it a little bit further. We actually have, so we have this AI bot built up of lots of different agents. And one of them we've just called It Depends agent, true to SEO form.
Right.
So there's some really exciting stuff going on there.
Amazing.
And this one's not really a question. I'm not going to answer this one. But yeah. But yes, we do have quite a few good questions that have come in. I'll have to. There's some that were in the chat as well. I'm going to have to scroll back up to because I thought they were really good. But one, I did not want to interrupt you mid-flow. I thought that would have been awful.
Yeah,
Um, and and two, there's some that have come in the chat. Oh my God, there's so many that have come in.
I can imagine.
Do
So I went
thank you very much for all the questions.
through.
Yeah, yeah, I do love answering questions, but some of these are tough. Um,
There's going to be a lot of it depends answers, I imagine. I hate answering
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I did a report review recently with my team, and I said the one thing you're not allowed to do is say it depends.
Mhm. Always.
Everybody still said it depends. Yeah. Now,
Perfect.
right, we'll move on to the questions.
All
So
right.
there are so many. The
Quiz.
first one I've got here. Sorry, go on, Sophie.
I was going to say, quiz me. Go ahead.
So Amber's got this question here specifically for Google AI mode. When
Hmm.
it comes to product research related prompts, do you believe Google Merchant Center feeds are going to play a larger role than page content on what would be considered more tech SEO optimizations? And I think in particular, I wanted to zone in on that merchant feed question.
Yeah, that's a good question. I like that. You know what? I feel like Google Merchant Center is incredibly important anyway. So forgetting AI mode for a second, we should always be really optimizing our Merchant Center because you've got so much like organic shopping listings now. Like even you can do a generic head term query, and I've seen where it's like you've got your paid at the top, then organic shopping, and then maybe one or two organic results, and then more organic shopping, and then maybe a people also ask, and then a few more organic results. So regardless of AI mode, definitely optimize your merchant center feed anyway. And there's a few different ways you can do that. It could be a whole other session that we could do on this,
Yeah.
but some of the main things we've been looking at is, making sure that you've got really well optimized product titles and it's not just like a small product name and like loads of different things that you can do, but definitely focus on that anyway. Will it feed into AI mode? I can absolutely see it feeding into AI mode. I haven't seen too much about it yet, to be honest, because a lot of the tests we've been doing, we've seen a few references at the top. A lot of it has just been going to websites. But we saw with some of the examples at the beginning of the presentation, they're pulling in map listings and they're pulling in a lot of that. Organic shopping and just the merchant center feeds and things are naturally going to be pulling in. And also, one thing that Google's not going to want to do is get rid of their biggest revenue drivers. And Google Shopping, Google Paid is all going to be part of that too. So even if it's like the paid shopping side, like that's probably going to be in there somewhere as well. So definitely optimize it. I'm sure we'll start seeing more product features and things like that in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure whether or not it's going to play a bigger role than page content. I think that's probably unlikely. But there
Yeah.
is one thing in there that makes me wonder it, and that's this is essentially information you provided uniquely to Google. You're not providing this to all these other LLMs and everything like that. So that's a leg up they have on every other LLM on this information. So I could see them using it more heavily than certainly they currently are.
Yeah, definitely. And I know we're seeing things like in ChatGPT, there's a few product um, elements being pulled in, but that's not from the feed. That is just them just pulling in products and things like
Yeah,
that.
they're
Yeah,
usually out of stock when I look for something.
yeah. Always the way. Or it's a broken page.
Yeah. Oh,
Favorite.
yeah.
They're hallucinations. Hilarious.
Um, so the next question here is from Geraldine. We've heard that LLM crawlers fetch raw HTML and also that AI is better at understanding images, videos, infographics, etc. But is this a contradiction? And I think that's a really interesting question because I think maybe that comes from referring to AI as a blanket term for everything when there's lots of different ones. But what do you think?
Yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree with you. I think the issue we have with AI at the moment is we're talking about everything very generally, right? So I think all of the different platforms are going to be different, specializes in different things. So for example, Claude is very, very, very good at parsing comprehensive content and producing it in like snapshot kind of terms, probably much better than what like ChatGPT is. Like Claude really, really is good at that and producing content as well. Is it a contradiction? I mean, within the HTML, you still have like a lot of your tags. And this is where I mean about making sure that they're also very well optimized. So like your images are well optimized, video snippets are well optimized, things like that too. So then it gives AI and just other LLMs and things like that a better chance of pulling this information through. So yeah, it probably wasn't a very detailed answer there, but it probably sounds like a contradiction. But just making sure everything is well optimized is the best way forward.
Yeah, I think some of that comes from, of course, there are AI bots that generate images and can look at an image and tell you what's on that page. So on the face of it, it's like, wow, look how good they are at processing it. That may not be the same bot that goes and crawls websites and finds all the information on the website. So
Yeah,
that's potentially where the contradiction comes from. But
definitely.
in an essence, they can use two bots. There's nothing stopping them from using two bots, apart from the fact it costs money. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And I think the fact that it costs money is also going to be interesting to see how that plays out because there's also an environmental impact to consider with a lot of this stuff. So will it all stay
Oh
free
yeah.
as well, or just like low cost? That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
There's a lot
Th-
of stuff.
There's there's a fantastic comic that I saw on this where somebody says, "Oh, I've got one bullet point. Can ChatGPT, can you turn this into an email?" So it turns it into a full email. And then at the other end is, "Oh, this is a long email. Can ChatGPT, can you summarize it into a single bullet point?" So essentially what's happened there is there's just lots of work been done that didn't need to be done.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah.
crazy. But yeah, no, it's super interesting. And even with like more going back to like the image and the text and the video content and stuff like that. thinking about multimodal search too, because even like I could take a picture, I've got my water bottle here, I can take a picture of my water bottle, I can image search that and find out where that's coming from. So I think making sure, like that's all taken into account too, outside of just LLMs. Like there's so many different ways that things can be searched for now, and I think that's only going to get bigger.
Absolutely, yeah. I literally used that the other day to try and find a product,
I,
and it worked. I did find it.
mine's plants in the garden because
Yeah.
when I bought the house, like they it was an old couple who used to live here and they were amazing at gardening, planted loads of stuff, was doing views of the house. We were like walking around it and she was pointing stuff out and I was like, I have no idea what any of this is. So I literally like image search different plants now to be like, when is this? Like, what is this green thing? I don't know what.
Amazing. So the next question here is from Kylie, and this is one that I think is a challenging one in some respects because they're running LLM audits. And what tools are you using to see the sites that are visible in LLMs? I've not actually found one that I find reliable. I don't know if you've found one.
Yeah, so that is great. So we've been doing loads on this because we're running a lot of this for our clients. We've been doing lots of manual ones, which is incredibly time consuming. Even I think just doing 60 odd different queries across, I think it was ChatGPT, Perplexity, DeepSeek, maybe Claude or no, Gemini, sorry. And that was like a good 10-hour like task, and it just doesn't work very well. You have to be really careful about location and all these kind of things. Doing it manually isn't always the best way. In terms of tools, Dixon Jones has produced a pretty good one. I've done a few tests on it. It's called Waikay. I can never say it right. It's Waikay, I think. And that's pretty good at just tracking overall kind of visibility, and just seeing where you're showing up and how you're showing up in different LLMs and where your competitors are showing up. That seems to be the best one that I've found so far. But there's new ones coming out all the time. So it's going to be super interesting. I think what we'll see is in a similar way to how like Lumar, you obviously like dominate in this space. There's your SEMrush and your Ahrefs in the keyword visibility space. Like this will narrow down in a year or two to main kind of tools and main competitors. But I'd say like kind of Waikay, I don't know how to say it, is probably the best one I've seen for doing these kind of audits so far. So check that out for sure.
Yeah, I think we'll maybe see an improvement over time. Things are just changing so fast as well. It's
Yeah,
difficult to,
absolutely. Like
yeah.
even just the way and how things are accessible and all these kind of things, it's just going to change. So yeah, I understand if you're running them for clients and you work in an agency, it's all clients are asking for right now. It's like, where am I showing up in ChatGPT? Or I did my search and I'm not showing up. Like, how can I show up and stuff like that? And it's not always a simple answer and it's not always easy to pull a visibility report. But yeah, it's definitely a challenge.
Cool. So we've got quite a few more. I'm just going to pick a few shorter ones so we can get through some more. Ash has asked, is there a way you can access AI search in the UK? And I assume she means, or he means AI overview, AI mode. There we go. Got it right in the end.
Yeah, definitely. You can VPN to the US. It is only rolled out in the US at the moment, but I believe it is available on Labs in the UK, I think. So yeah, sign up for Labs, and if not, VPN to the US. It's the best way to do it. That's how I do it when I'm back in the UK.
Um, and an interesting one here. Do you expect LLMs to be able to read JavaScript at some point? Is this in the works at any of the major AI firms right now? Now, I have an interesting thought on this, and that's there's no reason for them to want to execute the JavaScript. It's expensive for them on the server side because they have to execute it client side.
Yeah.
And then they have to process the results, and they probably have to process it before and after, much like Google does.
Mhm.
But I don't know if you've got any further insight.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. I was like, it's kind of really annoying that they can't do this and they won't do this. There's not been any news about them building something that's going to enable them to do this either. So yeah, but then at the same time, like Google says they can do it well. I've seen that they can't necessarily always do it well either. So I would honestly just like default to just not using JavaScript that much or making sure that everything is rendered in HTML as well. And it's server side rendered rather than client side because it's just it's not an easy way to do it, but it's going to be the best way for just future-proofing, not even just in AI, but in Google as well. But yeah, unfortunately, no news on that, but it is a very common frustration in the SEO world at the moment that
Oh, yeah.
they can't.
Yeah, I always use the example. I had the opportunity to speak to Martin Splitt about this,
Mhm.
and he was saying the way that Google works is they render, well, they don't render, sorry, they crawl, they don't render, then they come back with a renderer, and then he produced a table of how long it takes them to render, and something like 70, 80% seconds, then 20, 30%-ish, they were in a minutes. But at the bottom, there was 0.1%, which was over 5 years. And 0.1%, it probably was smaller than 0.1%, I should say, but 0.1% or smaller for Google is still billions and billions of web pages. So there's always the chance that Google just doesn't render your page. What does your page look like if nothing's rendered on it? And that always stuck with me in terms of, well, what does it look like? Does it work? Because that's the ultimate final thing of that could be the page that's indexed.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Um, Another one here from Diramud. Apologies if I pronounced that wrong. Are keyword phrases on WordPress sites, Yoast, important for AI to understand, or is other metadata more relevant?
Yeah, meta keywords, if that's where we're going with the question.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, they've not really been important, even for Google for a little while. So I'd say that's definitely not something we should prioritize. Your page titles, your meta descriptions, they're going to be there to help in terms of keyword relevancy, but mostly click-through rate and really just describing what the page is about and trying to encourage the clicks. So I'd put your time and effort into kind of your metadata, so your page titles and your meta descriptions. How they pull into AI, it's a good question. It's not super clear, but it is another signal in terms of relevancy. So I'm sure they read it in a similar way to the way Google does. So yeah, don't worry about the meta keywords, but more than likely the page titles and meta descriptions is where your focus should go.
Yeah, there was an interesting comment from John Muller about meta descriptions not that long ago on LinkedIn, where he was essentially implying that for AI bots, use all of that space. It's a space on your page where you can put a full summary of your page. The AI bot can ingest it, Google can ingest it, but it's not going to affect any of the content on your page. It's not going to affect your keyword rankings and things like that. So you can put whatever you like in there and really exploit that. He was of the opinion that this is the era of the meta description. Now, I'm not sure if that's true, but I do like the sentiment.
I do like that. I love some of the things John says.
He's fantastic.
He is brilliant. Yeah, like that's pretty interesting. And I mean, Google is just rewriting a lot of meta descriptions now anyway, based on, your search history, based on location, based on the query and the intent behind the query. And it doesn't always matter what you even put in as a meta description, to be honest, in terms of what actually shows up. It can very much get rewritten very, very easily and in different situations. So yeah, to be fair, it probably does make sense to have a bit of a summary there, but then you're in a lot less control in terms of what displays. So it kind of just, yeah, depends on what your priorities are there. For me, I kind of still stick to the pixel count, just to try and, again, put more call to action, put more USP stuff in there, like
Yeah.
really try and encourage the clicks. But yeah, it was super interesting.
Cool. We've probably got time for a couple more, so I'll hop back up to one that I think is we may have answered, well, you may have answered during your presentation, which is from Stephanie. And it's when you mention optimizing all assets, including image and video, what do you mean by that? What components should be optimized?
Yeah, so things like your alt attributes, and any of like the embeds that would sit in your HTML code and making sure that they're well optimized. And I don't mean keyword stuffing because that's the way that was done in the past. It was just like, oh, that's another place that I can put my keyword that's in the HTML, and Google will crawl that. But genuinely just describing it, thinking about it from like an accessibility perspective. If you don't have an image kind of alt attribute or anything like that, then Google's going to see a white space. Essentially, they're going to know an image is there, they're just not going to know what it is. And it's probably going to be the same thing for AI bots as well. So just describe what the image is and like really kind of give that contextual kind of background to it. Because again, semantic relevance, your image is more than likely going to be relevant to the content on the page and the service and the product and things like that you sell. So when you're uploading your files into whether it's WordPress, Shopify, things like that, there's going to be a bunch of different fields that you'll be able to fill in. Even file name is going to be really important. So not just having like a bunch of numbers, dot MOV, whatever that is, name it something that's actually relevant to what the video is about. All of these different kind of things may provide signals. On top of that, thinking about site speed, thinking about performance, making sure your images and your videos are compressed before they're uploaded, and just making sure that they're not slowing down the page too, because that's also going to have a bit of an impact.
Awesome. There's one more question I think we've probably got time for, and it's an interesting one because I'm not 100% sure of the context of this. This is from Don Hines. Have you used log file analysis to better understand 404 page hallucinations? And I'm assuming this is in AI bots, they hallucinate 404 pages. So they're not real 404 pages.
Yeah.
Do you set up redirects or try to find content ideas for the URL? I don't know if you can clarify it all, Dom, but are you suggesting the AI bot is saying something is a 404 when it's not? Or is it the other way around? It is a 404 and the AI bot's saying it's not.
Yeah, I think maybe, when you're asking for a
Ah,
source and then it comes up as a broken page, maybe.
he's just clarified there. Yes, LLMs tend to hallucinate a non-existent URL. Now that is fascinating. That explains, I think, some of the issues that I've been seeing when using ChatGPT to try and find a product. Yeah. So for this one, actually, I'm going to go back about 10 years to how I solved the problem of not a bot hallucinating, but a human hallucinating, if you like. They mistyped the URL and effectively generated hundreds of 404 errors on our page for a URL that didn't exist, but a very similar one did exist. And that's the number one thing I would sort of flag there is if you've got something that kind of does exist, if the AI bot's not just gone crazy and started saying you sell shoes when you sell insurance,
Mhm.
if you've got something that's very similar to it, I would redirect. And if presuming there's traffic coming through, if there's one or two clicks, I'd probably just not do anything about it. But if there's a bunch coming through, then I would redirect to try and capture that. Now, obviously, if you're at that stage where people are already clicking through, you may have already missed the opportunity. But there's not a lot you can do when the bot is wrong on your behalf, effectively. Do you
Yeah.
have any additional thoughts on that, Sophie?
No, I completely agree with that. I think if it's hallucinating something that you don't have an article about or you like it and it is super relevant and it could genuinely provide good context and things like that, then sure, you could absolutely create that content and create that as a new URL. I think the main thing here is, like AI bots are just not that good. Like LLMs are not always good. They are going to keep hallucinating stuff. Hopefully they'll get better, but it is one of the big flaws in kind of LLMs and things like that. And again, it's why it wouldn't surprise me if, we have all this hype around kind of using ChatGPT as a new search engine and things, and then it kind of just like teeters off a little bit in the future because we see it with things like using an Alexa or using voice like assistants as well. That's why voice search never took off because it either was incomplete or that was wrong or couldn't quite understand what you needed and stuff like that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves in the future. But yeah, if there's a gap and you think you can fill the gap and there's like an information thing, absolutely fill it. I agree, Richard, with what you said about if it's something that's happening regularly and it's potentially going to drive a lot of traffic, then definitely put a redirect in place. But most of the time, there's not a whole lot you can necessarily do about the hallucinations. Unfortunately, it's just a byproduct of how these things work.
But it is a good reason to be checking your internal, if you've got them, your internal logs for 404 errors and things like that.
Mhm.
It's always handy to know what's happening in terms of what pages people are actually visiting.
Yeah, absolutely. I always feel like a log file analysis can be really handy. There was a big hype about it, and lots of very small websites that didn't need to do it started doing it and
Yeah,
wasting a lot of time and a lot of resources. But if you have a big website or you feel like there is issues or there's bots hitting one or two pages, but they're not reading the whole site, stuff like that, definitely go ahead and
yeah.
look.
The key for me is to have a purpose, to have a reason behind why you want those log files,
Absolutely. Don't
because
just do it
that guides you. Yeah,
wasting clients' budget or something like
yeah,
that.
exactly.
Because I definitely know of people who were doing that in the past.
Um, amazing. Right, we should probably wrap up because it's now 2 minutes past 6. Definitely gone well past it. So, if you want to dive deeper, we've got our next blog that. Sorry, we're going to publish this onto our blog. We've got our new ebook that's coming out, and the latest guide, your guide to AI search and SEO, and we have another webinar on the 9th of July for 2025, optimizing multi-category enterprise sites. I struggle to even say that. I'll be better in the future, I promise. But thank you very much, everybody, for joining today. If you didn't get your question answered, please feel free to reach out to myself. I won't put Sophie on the hook for it, but I'm sure she'll be more than happy to chat to you on LinkedIn and try and answer some questions.
Definitely, yeah.
Otherwise, that's it. Volunteering somebody else. That's my specialty. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Sophie.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great. And thanks for all the awesome questions, guys.